Well, here's part 3. I wanted to get this video in. I have done some work to the chassis, as probably fairly obvious. I've mounted most of the components back on. This is something that you want to do early on so that you can get to your different nuts and bolts, because once everything is in place and once all the wiring's in place, these could be very difficult to get to. So you want to, the very first thing you want to do is, once you've got things cleared out and cleaned out, is start putting stuff on, especially stuff from the top of the chassis in, so that you can get it bolted in. And so you don't have to worry about trying to get these. I mean, like these capacitors, the tuning capacitor bolts, once the band switch is in, it's very obvious that it gets to be pretty difficult to get to those. Once all the wiring and stuff is, a lot of the wiring ran in here, could be making it rather difficult to get to some of these. Now, I've ran, whenever I redo a radio, the very first things that I run is my heater wiring, or filament wiring, depending on which way it's directly or indirectly heated cathodes. So I ran these wires. These are the heater wires throughout the radio, coming down here. And if I can zoom in on some of these, there's some things. Hopefully the lighting is good enough that you can see this. I twist my wires together, and what that does is it reduces the potential for any radiation from these. When you twist wires together, such like this, then what you end up is any radiation from one individual wire will just be canceled out by the other wire. Because at any one point in time, this is AC going through here, same as this. Any one point in time, it's going, you pick a point and stop time. It's going this direction in this wire, but in this direction in this other wire. So it's going two different directions. They cancel, the magnetic fields will cancel out, and so you don't get any radiation. So that's why I twist them. Once it got down in this area here, I actually followed, I took pictures. You always want to take pictures. I followed their means of doing the wiring, and I believe the brown wire, the black wire is ground. The brown is the hot. Black wire is a chassis potential. They brought the brown, they wired it the way they did to bring the brown around over closer into this area here to try to reduce any potential radiation there too. And see, that's one point I want to make out. When you're running wiring in a radio and you're dressing it, most of the time the chassis is going to be a huge ground plane, so it's a huge shield. And one of the best places for shielding is right up in these corners, right in here. Any break points where the chassis bends, then you get a shield that is the most shielding you're going to get from this, because you've got a plane going this way and you've got a plane going this way. So you tuck those wires in that corner, it really shields the wires really well. If you can't do that, such like in this tube socket sitting out in the middle, then you try to hold the wire down tight to the chassis. Let's see, what else? I've got to still wire in the light I put new wiring on it. It'll come up through this hole, attached to this point here, and of course it comes out front and illuminates the front. At this point, some of the other things you want to add in is also do any wiring grounds. There'll be a wire that has to go from here to this point. I'll get it soldered in. I still got to clean these up, get these off. That's where a soldering iron such as this comes in handy. This has got a massive tip. It's only a 100-watt soldering iron, and I've got soldering guns that are 300 watt, but they don't have this massive tip on them. What this does is when this thing heats up, this mass gets hot, and it's a lot harder for it to be drawn down. This chassis is just a giant heat sink, so you need something like this whenever you're soldering on to a chassis. You can buy these used off like eBay and stuff, but and some of the prices I've seen on them, I'll be honest with you, they still make these. I looked up here just not too long ago in a hardware store locally. They had a Weller soldering iron, heavy duty like this, 100 watt, same tip size, 100 watt soldering iron, just basically the same thing as this, for $100. And that's not bad at all, considering a lot of these like this can run you in that price range too. So something to think about. But they sure make it a lot easier when you're trying to solder these. If you try using one of these, you're going to be sitting there from now until next century and still never get it melted. The other things I've been doing has been slowly getting the wiring changed over, replaced on the band switch and the oscillator coil. I still got a few more wires to do here and get that done. And one thing I didn't think about, I didn't get a chance to say, I need a script. I can tell you because I forget things. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a brighter color wire here, and you can see some hot glue. This it got broke by something. I don't know what. There looks to appear to be some sort of like something went across. It could have been a rodent. I don't know. Being what the cabinet looked like, and like it was trying to gnaw on this. Now this coil's fine. This actually goes to this coil, and it was broke a point here where it goes through the tube and comes up and hooks at this end, and it was broke up in here, somewhere in here, and I had just a little bit of lead, and I was managed to get me some wire. I don't know where I got this from. I don't remember what this was off of, but it's magnet wire. Doesn't matter. It's a little bit heavier than what this wire was, but it doesn't matter because it's just the lead that actually connects. It's not really technically part of the coil. So I soldered it on, ran it through the hole, came up through the center, which you wouldn't be able to see, and then come up and wrapped it, soldered it. So now that's the antenna coil, and it's in good shape. I still got to replace the wires on it. The next step in this will be, after I get any other grounds, wiring grounds done, I got to unsolder this one here, and I've got a wire for that. It was a heavy gauge ground that was on there originally. Put that one on there, run this ground which goes over to here. Once I get all that done, the next stage will be in the wiring is to go ahead and run the cathodes. They're the nearest to ground potential or the lowest voltage. So I'll run any cathode wiring that needs to be. Now, throughout this is basically wiring. Just the wiring, not components. Some cathodes are directly connected to a resistor or something, or it goes directly to ground pretty virtually right at the socket. But there are a couple in here that do have some wire leads to them. So I'll run those. After that, then we'll run the B plus circuitry wiring, and then screen wiring. The grids, control grids, will be probably actually one of the last wirings that will be ran. At the time of running B plus, we'll be running the plates, so connections from the IF transformers to the plates will be put in, and when we get to the grids, that'll be when to do the grid connections. Some other stuff that I've been working on making up is one of the grid leads. Of course, all the grid leads are bad. Goes from here, from the volume control, and goes to this tube here, which is the first AF. And it was a shielded wire, kind of like old coax, and it's got a cloth on it. I don't have anything like that, so the closest thing I could come up with was a piece of RG58U. It's fairly close in size, but it's not cloth. Now, if a guy wanted to, one of the tricks you can use is a shoelace. You can go buy you a shoelace, in this case black, and cut the ends off, and then if you just kind of bunch it up a little bit, it'll get a little bigger. Run it across, and then probably like heat shrink tubing at one end and the other end to keep it from fraying. And you'd have something back about like this. But I don't know. I'm not going to get quite that particular with it. And of course, like I said, the lamp light's been done. The other thing I've done is rewire the speaker line and went ahead and lace it with lacing. It just string, so it kind of stays together a little better. This will go through here. There's a hole right in the chassis there. It'll go through that one, come in, make a knot for strain relief, then two wires come over into this area here to the output tube. One wire goes over to the cathode, and another wire comes over to here to one of the condensers, capacitors, filters. Let's see, where am I at next? Well, in the next video, like I say, I'll have some more wiring done, and I want to try to get set up to kind of do some stuff, work live, I guess you'd call it, or whatever. At least do some. That's really about it. That's where we're at. Some things about wire dressing. One thing I wanted to do is I watched the other video and it didn't really come out real good, so I wanted to kind of get this up a lot closer so that you can see what I was talking about. Hopefully that's in focus. There's that little pin notch right there underneath the number 1. There's one underneath number 2. Anyway, that's your key, and you start counting to the right, 1, 2, 3, and so on. The thing I wanted to show you was they talk about some wire dressing issues right here on this radio. The very first thing that they mention is dress the power switch leads against the left apron to prevent hum pickup. Well, this is the left apron, and these are the power leads going to the switch, and they want, now the way they had them, actually they kind of stuck out a little bit here. I'm going to try to get them a little bit closer in, but they want to dress them kind of pretty much tight down in the corner here and tight over here to keep this from humming. Now this actually has twists up again further when it goes to the switch, and of course then the power cord comes in and connects into here. Some of the other things that they talk about wire dressing on here is dress R1 away from the front of the chassis. R1's this 1 meg. It goes down to the can here, IF can, so they want you to keep it as far away from the front as possible. Number 3, which matters nothing on this, in the console version of this, there's a light bulb that lets you know that you've got the push button switches on, so you can use those. It comes on when they're in operation. They talk about dress lead from L5 to range switch away from other leads. L5 is this coil down here, I believe. Anyway, they're wanting you to try to keep those leads that lead away from the rest of them. Dress leads away from the antenna coil, so keep leads away from the antenna coil, which mounts in this area right here, so that you want to keep stuff away from it, except for its own leads. And then the last little thing is dress other parts and leads away from R14, which is that sand resistor was here. It was a 5-watt resistor, and their concern was that as it becomes heated, so you don't melt any insulation of wiring. So with that said, there's not much else to say. I do have a question for you, and I told you that I would probably try to give you some questions on when I was working on the other series. Here's the rectifier tube, right down here in the corner, transformer. Now what's above that rectifier, now realize this thing is, well, cathode, at the cathode of the rectifier we have 366 volts. These excuse me, that's center tap. Okay, it's a center tap power. So I've got over 700 volts on the plate lead wires here. That's 700 volts, over 700 volts AC, 60 cycles. So it's, it's a powerful transmitter. What sits above it and sits right down in here and tight down in here is the front end, the main portion of the front end of the radio, oscillator coil. It's setting real tight to here. These are the trimmer caps, which you can't see. These are the trimmer caps right here for this oscillator coil. That's all setting right here. Yet I've got a very powerful 60 cycle transmitter there, 60 hertz transmitter. Why did we put it here? Why not as far away as possible, like over in this end from that, is my question. Now, the thing I will give you as a hint, think about what they talked about, the power leads, and trying to keep them shielded and dressed away from everything as possible, including these tubes over here, which is the audio output tube right here. This is the first AF tube. In fact, the flow of signal comes in from the antenna, which is down below here, right by the rectifier tube, comes into the front end through the band switch to this tube. This is the mixer tube, an oscillator tube, IF amplifier, second IF transformer, detector, and ABC. First audio and output. So anyway, the question is, how can we get by with this over here instead of putting it away from there? And that'll be my question for you. One last little thing here. Video gets long. Okay, on the last video I tried answering a comment, and with this change in with Google Plus and YouTube merging deal, whatever it is, I found out that one of the people I cannot answer, and it's Joe, and Joe, you should know who you are, but anyway, your handle is RANUTS, Raynuts2. I don't know how to pronounce that, but I tried answering you. It told me I couldn't. I don't know why. I'm not sure what is the deal with this, but I have been noticing some other videos about this, and some people not being able to answer comments on their video channels and some they can. Excuse me. The biggest thing, yeah, I do have my work cut out, especially with the cabinet. I want to answer your comment, and I'm glad you're anxious to see the next one. Here is the next one, and we'll continue on. There'll be more, and I'm glad you're enjoying the series, and thank you for watching, and thank all of you for watching and for your comments. So on the next one, we'll have more wiring done, and maybe we can do some stuff on live. So until next time, thank you, and keep watching.